Guys, so I'm very excited to show you this gameplay. I finally managed to level up Absolution. It's a big upgrade over Mistsplitter for me, and I also tweaked some artifacts. I started using this Electro Goblet, and also I learned a lot about Clorinde Quicken teams compared to day one. And yes, I'm still using Gladiators Finale with C0. Apart from Fischl, obviously my supports are all C0, and I'm still using weapons like Wandering Even Star, Stringless. The only 5 stars are Freedom Sworn and Absolution. So it's a 5 cost team total. So let's get into the gameplay first, and then I'll show you my full builds and explain some strategies that I figured out and tips that I know to play Clorinde.
Clouds high. The bird. Midnight Ventuck. Hunt them down. One with wind and cloud.
Make yourselves a home.
Hunt them down. Wind strike.
Midnight Fantastic.
Ready.
A minute to memory.
Time to test the bomb.
Make yourselves a home. Wings of darkness.
Wind strike. Into the shadows. Shoot on sight.
Shadow Raven.
Wind strike.
A minute to memory.
Ready. Loaded.
Okay, so tip number 1, and this goes for all chambers, but to play Clorinde most effectively, you're going to want to constantly be pressing your WASD keys or your left thumbstick or whatever you have if you're not playing on a keyboard in order to control where her lunge is moving. The first obvious one is for damage. Although her hits have pretty great AoE regardless, you do want to do your best to ensure that you're hitting as many enemies as possible. And the best way to do that is flashing through all enemies in a line. But the second reason is defensively. Now, the lunge doesn't outright stop you from taking damage, but you can think of it like an indirect tool to dodge enemies' attacks and basically confuse their aim. The best example is Chamber 2. You can see dashing with the right timing helps you dodge the coppelius anemo projectiles, and they not only do a lot of damage obviously, but the hits from these guys in general can stagger Clorinde and stop her dealing damage, since as we all know she has a short damage window uptime anyway. Losing any of that by getting staggered and stopping attack is not good at all. Now, for more specific strategies to fight the triple kenkis effectively, I know I said you don't want to take time away from her damage window, but you do actually want to take time to dodge some of their attacks, especially this plunge attack that they can do. If you get hit by this, I noticed that a lot of bad things can happen. Number 1, Clorinde might die straight up. Number 2, she can get staggered. Number 3, you get cryo applied to you, which will slow down your damage. And overall, unless you have a shielder, you just lose more damage by not dodging. I've also experimented with using her burst for iframes when they do big attacks like those, but this can just lower her overall damage compared to just using it at the start. And I might as well say it again, but the first tip is great versus the triple kenkis too. The triple kenkis are not the most fastest enemies, so constantly lunging up and down can indirectly dodge many of their attacks. So number 3, for the coppelius, I've used a lot of Clorinde teams at this point versus these guys, and it's basically 2 strats. You either front load a bit of damage early and then you aim to win the fight in about 2 full rotations, or you do a full team setup, then break the shield and then start Clorinde's full damage window with as many buffs as you can. And what I found most effective is, although I do use Clorinde's burst early, I do also opt for a full team setup, and then I break the shield with Kazuha's skill and Fischl's burst. Honestly, the damage you gain from Nahida's and Kazuha's burst and recasting Oz is worth it, especially if you are close to being able to one rotate. And the other tip for this fight is you do need to dodge the main guy's AoE cryo attacks, again unless you have a shield. I think it has specific timing, so it does take some practice, but generally I think it's used at the start when they're both spinning around, and then he uses it again when she joins back up with him. And yeah, similar to Kenki's, it's better that you dodge these rather than trying to brute force. And the last tip for chamber 3 is a stereotypical AoE multi-wave fight, and the best advice I can give is learning how to spread out Clorinde's damage. You have to remember you don't have to use her burst and skill all at once. I actually noticed sometimes you can fight some enemies with just her burst and let the rest of your team do the rest, and other times use her skill and get a nice damage window there. Clorinde's overall a very flexible character, but you can say she has a skill gap in that regard. You kind of have to get a feel for when you should be doing a full max damage window and when you should be saving some stuff for later. The good thing about these aggravate teams is that they are naturally quick swap friendly anyway, so you aren't punished too hard by swapping between your characters a lot. But of course, the more you swap and the more you have to reset up stuff like Kazuha's debuffs and Nahida's skill, the more that will add up over time, and it could make for a slow clear time overall. But do it in moderation and it's very effective. Lastly, gear wise, this team is pretty straightforward, but one thing is, I know there is a debate on whether you should use Deepwood Memories on Nahida or Tenacity of the Millilith to buff Clorinde and Fischl instead. Personally, I'm using Deepwood. In my experience, Nahida's damage is good enough, especially in AoE, that I value her personal damage. And if you're like me, you probably have better stats on your Deepwood Memory set anyway compared to your Tenacity set. I have some pieces like this, but my set really isn't that amazing. But overall, it's your choice. I'm happy to be wrong, and it turns out Tenacity is more optimal strat for the future, but for now I'm sticking with this. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the showcase and the tips at the end. Hopefully this helps you guys play Clorinde better, and look forward to more Clorinde videos from me. I've been having a ton of fun playing her, and I've got a ton of ideas coming soon. Thanks for all the support on the last video. I know the last video did very well, and yeah, thanks for watching.